All right, that's what I see. That's why I look at my phone. I'm not texting anybody. That's what we're doing. We're making sure everything is professional. So, this is the new studio. It's not quite finished yet, but it's a work in progress. And I don't really have the captain's chair yet, but I got this fancy hunter's chair. It's like a monowalker doodad, you know, it rolls around. You can sit on it and shoot these things right here. It's got the Get Lit Wendigo on it, you know, the guy who eats people, and every time he eats somebody, he doubles in size so he can never satiate his hunger. Cannibalism, not a good thing, man. Don't do it. No matter how bad things get, don't do it, because you will succumb to the Wendigo psychosis. You ever seen that movie? The guy from 28 Days Later is in it. Go check it out. It's a funny movie. Funny in a dark, it's a really dark humor kind of way. Anyways, we're here to talk about all things shit hits the fan. Everything from riots to anti-lockdown riots, economic crashes, and tech moguls getting grilled on election meddling and what's going to happen after the election, and just everything under the sun. We're going to talk about it all today, if I can remember everything. So this is going to be a purely, you know, impromptu video. I got no teleprompter. This is my teleprompter. Actually, I do have a teleprompter. I haven't set it up yet, and I feel really weird reading off teleprompters. Part of me just doesn't want to do it, but I can understand how it can, you know, keep a person on track. Anyways, I figure if I bring a little bit more of a juvenile vibe to the channel, you know, I got my Get Lit t-shirt. I know it's probably pretty cringy. It's probably 2017. Somebody's out there thinking, oh, that's so cringy. 'Tis the season to get lit. And to be honest, I haven't gotten lit in years. But by the end of this year, I'm probably going to have to, because things are just getting crazy. And you know, I need to let loose. I need to let loose. This one, I'm going to be phoning it in, guys, okay? I think it's important that we just talk as people every once in a while. And, you know, that last video I did about the various different types of fuel, as much as I learned a lot in making that video, and I love making videos like that because they're so educational and important and practical. Sometimes I just got to let loose and just talk free form. There's so much to talk about, and I'm going to try not to get myself in too much trouble. I guess I'll just, if I do, you know, start going down the path of getting too serious about something, I'll just act a little goofy and juvenile, and hopefully that still gets me into the YouTube suggestion results. That's the whole thing, you know, you got to act goofy and trendy. You know, that trending page, man, it really starts to resemble District 1 of the Hunger Games more and more each day. It's just so frivolous and eccentric, completely detached from reality. If you want me to sugarcoat things and tell you that everything is gonna be okay and pat you on the back and, you know, send you on your way with a nice little bag of lunch with some treats in it, that's not gonna happen, okay? You can get that anywhere else on the internet. There's lots of people that plaster on a fake smile for you guys every single day to make you feel comfortable, because that's what people like. You know, a lot of people, they love emotion, okay? So there's some people who are really drawn to, hi guys, everything is fine, and you know, we don't have to worry about anything, and just consume and do stupid things and watch Mr. Beast give $5 million away to someone else today.
Some people love that stuff.
Other people love to see people really
fired up and passionate and righteous, and look at all these people who are screwing us over and this and that.
Me, I'm actually quite middle of the road. Anyways, the pandemic, man, it's going strong, you know, since the beginning of this thing. And I want to say, first off, I probably should have said this at the beginning, but watching me or anybody that does what I do does not constitute research. Okay, research is one of two things. It's peer-reviewed studies done in academia, okay, which are in journals, which are reputable, or it's like a qualitative research where you're reading biographies or documentaries on specific issues. That's research. Okay, watching a guy, you know, go hard about something he heard somewhere, or some, you know, half-assed claim that the Chinese are invading Canada and they're building camps and all this stuff. With respect to that particular issue, I can tell you that I haven't even really looked into it that much, and here's the reason why. I haven't looked into it that much because back in 2000, back during the swine flu thing, they were talking about how FEMA had all these makeshift caskets ready to go. And as true as it may have been, it's kind of just like what I found with those types of theories is, somebody stumbles upon it, and somebody sent me a link the other day that, the Canadian government was stockpiling, what was it, pepper spray or some kind of crowd control agents, tear gas or something like that. There was an order for like 1 million things of tear gas or whatever. I love when people send me that information, but at the same time, it's like, what do I really do with that? I'm not trying to promulgate any type of misinformation on this channel. I'm not saying it's all misinformation, but I am saying that I've heard these things before. I've heard these kind of theories before. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle, okay? Now, with respect to the pandemic, here's the thing, man. The powers that be are never going to tell you how bad it is. They're never really going to tell you as bad it is because they don't want to create a panic. That's one thing. And we've seen that earlier in the year. Now, some people are starting to think that they're overreacting in certain things that they're doing right now. But even Trump himself said that he didn't want to cause a panic, which is why earlier in the year, they basically said that the pandemic was going to be gone within a few weeks. So just consider that anytime they tell you something is okay. And I know most of my viewers leave that generic comment that, when they tell you everything's fine, that's when you run, right? Isn't that from a movie 2012 with John Cusack? He said that when, right before the shit hit the fan. It's very true. So if they're telling you right now that things are going to be fine, things ain't going to be fine. We all know things ain't going to be fine because the numbers just don't add up. What is the goal with the lockdowns? Do they make sense? I'm still perplexed and baffled by that myself. Now, in a recent video, I discussed the difference between autocratic and democratic societies and their dealings and their handling with these types of situations, and why both types of societies around the world are trying to undermine each other via the internet and ideological subversion and all that stuff. But in terms of dealing with SHTF crises, autocratic societies are always going to be able to handle those situations better because they can impose crackdowns on their populations with relative ease. They have more compliant, obedient populations that are conditioned to, follow orders. And that's not like meant as a jab against the people within those countries. That's just their culture. They did that psychology experiment with the kids and the fish, and the Chinese kids, when asked, would you like to be part of a school of fish, or would you like to be this individual fish over here? 99% said, I want to be a part of the school of fish, whereas in America, all the kids picked the single fish, okay? And that's great in times of prosperity, and non-SHTF, the Western societies excel, because the freedom to do what you want and the freedom to innovate and not be micromanaged allows for an unfolding of infinite potential economically and in terms of the things that we invent and materially and all that. Whereas in the autocratic governments, there's a limit because they're trying to micromanage everything. And you can't micromanage innovation into existence, which is why you end up copying everything that these other countries do, okay? So in shit hits the fan, autocratic societies have the advantage. In non-shit hits the fan, democratic societies have the advantage. At least that's what I'm realizing. So that's why you see these countries out east where they just have a more, I don't want to say communistic type culture, but because not all of them have that sort of economic paradigm, and arguably there's very few true communistic paradigms in practice right now. But the ones of a more socialist slant tend to be more cooperative. And those are the ones where you can impose those type of restrictions without any pushback. This is why you're seeing riots in all of the European countries right now and the United States. This is why I predicted 2 years ago when I made that video, 10 reasons why SHTF in North America will be hell. That was one of the reasons, was that we are so individualistic that it's trying to herd cats in a crisis. As much as, you might have, 4 or 5% of the population who are preppers, and I mean, sure, in a lot of European countries, 50% of people are preppers. What's that? Switzerland? Is that the one? Overwhelming majority of people have bunkers. In North America, one of our greatest strengths is our greatest weakness in an SHTF situation. And that's why it got out of control. And it would have got out of control no matter who was in charge. That's why, as much as I have my issues with Trump, I really get annoyed by the persistent, ongoing blame game of the left, using that as their main critique of their administration handling of the pandemic. It's a systemic problem. It's a problem with the individualistic ideology and the democratic nature of our society. And this is why you're going to see big pushback. You know, people talk about being concerned about the riots from BLM and Antifa and those groups if Trump gets elected and it's contested and it's not seen as legitimate. Yeah, there's going to be riots, but there's also going to be some serious riots if more intense lockdown measures are imposed. We're seeing that all over the world right now, and that's only going to intensify because only something like 10% of the population has really been either infected or impacted by the virus so far. So that means you still have at least 5 times the amount of people before we achieve herd immunity, which now they're saying immunity only lasts a few months. You know, some people say, oh, well, it's just political here, and the only reason why they're doing what they're doing right now and taking the approach they're taking and, you know, hyping it up is political. But if you look in Europe, there's lockdowns being imposed, okay? And they're doing that because they're trying to catch up with these autocratic societies who supposedly have it under control because their populations are more compliant. It's very frowned upon to not wear a mask. I mean, you're not only frowned upon, you could go to jail in some places. Okay, and I'm not saying I'm advocating for that in any way, shape, or form. I think as preppers, obviously, we're all willing to be the dictators of our own homes and our own behaviors. You know, I'm just saying that's the potential outcome because most people aren't going to follow the rules. Right? So, as much as I don't agree with all the economic shutdowns and all that, you know, I realize that the people in charge are also in a bit of a predicament here because I'm not entirely sure that we know everything about. I know they're saying, you know, we got this virus under control and we can treat it and all this. And look, unless you have 12 doctors around you and you have Regeneron and whatever Trump got, you know, I mean, he got the royal treatment. Not everybody is going to make out that good. Most people who are young and healthy and they take their vitamin D and blah, blah, blah. Okay, you're going to make it out all right, okay? For now. As far as we know. But this could change. You know, I really don't understand. In a way I do. I kind of have my theories of what's going on because here's the other thing that's happening. I pay attention, very close attention to the Arctic sea ice situation because the implications for that on the global food supply and just coastal cities and how we manage weather anomalies in the future is massive. And there is an alarming loss of ice this year that nobody is talking about. It's getting no media attention. And I've talked about this before. When it's a real problem, okay, they talk about it just enough so that they can, you know, pull the whole carbon tax racket, you know, but they're not really going to do anything that significant. And part of me wonders, like, do they know that the shit is really going to hit the fan? Because if you go and look at this graph, I'll post a graph right here, wherever, okay? The Arctic sea ice right now, it's not freezing like it's supposed to. It's literally like 2 million square kilometers less ice than not just of all time, okay, of last year. So it's not refreezing. It was the second lowest recorded sea ice on record this year, but a lot of people criticize that number because the density, the actual density of the ice, the thickness of the ice was way lower. So in terms of the actual volume of the ice is melting, okay? And we could potentially see an ice-free Arctic in the next 2 years. Now, I'm not saying we're gonna have like a Guy McPherson a climate disaster where, you know, everybody's dead in 10 years type scenario. I think we have 7 years left, according to him. That go watch my Guy McPherson videos if you want to be scared shitless. The Arctic sea ice melt is so incredibly significant. I've talked about it at length on the channel before. A lot of people are saying there's colder weather right now. And yes, that's because the jet stream is all but broken down. And the thing that creates the jet stream is the cooler Arctic temperatures. The colder it is in the Arctic, the tighter the jet stream and the more it holds back those really cold temperatures. Without the jet stream, all that Arctic cool air goes down to us. That might seem like, oh, global warming isn't real. No, overall, the world is getting hotter. The Arctic is heating up 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. And that's why it's throwing everything out of whack. But people just look outside and they say, oh, it's snowing in October. And by the way, it's supposed to be nice out in the next week or so. It depends on where you fall in the jet stream. And the jet stream right now is getting weaker. And that's going to cause some major weather anomalies, which could change the whole chessboard in terms of arable land and stuff like that. So yeah, food shortages, you need to start getting prepared for that kind of stuff because it's coming. And part of me thinks that this whole approach that we're taking to managing this pandemic is just a part of that. Either they're worried about more viruses coming in the future, or this virus is worse than we think it is because we're hearing about these neurological effects and this, that, and a third. Like, is this the virus that takes out part of the human race in some long form, soft kill type way? You know, it's possible. I'm not trying to scare people here. This is just how my mind works. This is my mind unfiltered for you guys. Now, in terms of the Philly Riots, let's talk a bit about that. I left a comment on a YouTube video. What did I say? I said, no stimulus check, no problem. And it was a video of people walking out with flat screen TVs. We need to talk about the wealth gap between Black Americans and white Americans and other Americans, okay? That's a problem. And I was watching this interview with Ice Cube the other day, and was it Andrew Cuomo? Is that what it is? And I really got upset at this interview because this Cuomo guy had the audacity to seemingly interrogate Ice Cube. Like, it was almost like he was, you better explain yourself as to why, you know, you chose Trump or whatever. And Ice Cube explained to him, look, it's not like we've chose Trump, even though he didn't have to explain himself. And he did challenge Cuomo on the fact that he's misrepresenting what he's doing. He said that Trump is the president. So we're going to work with whoever is the president. We're not going to be people's political football because our communities are in shambles and it's only getting worse. And he distinctly said that we're not going to survive the next 100 years because the wealth gap between black and whites in America is widening like crazy. And that's due to a lot of reasons that I've thought about making a video on it. I have ideas about that you're never going to hear anywhere else, and I may have to make the video. I might have to do it on the Cyberpunk channel. I don't think it's that controversial. I think it's stuff that a lot of other people have spoken about, but I would put it together in a way which would be very palatable and easy to understand from a centrist perspective. And I think that it would explain a lot of things in a very simple way for a lot of people. I'd love to do it here today, but I think I'm going to have to save that for another video. But until that issue is addressed, no matter how you want to address it, and I know there's going to be a litany of comments about how they should address it and this, that, and everything, but that's definitely going to continue, unfortunately, until something is done, until something proactive hopefully is done. Proactive in the sense that it's not just throwing out stimulus checks and throwing out money, because we all know what's going to happen with these stimulus checks. You know, stimulus, in a way, as good as it sounds to people who are in need and broke, and I totally understand, you know, it really is a form of rations. It's like ration cards, only your ration cards are this fiat currency. That's all it is. And the unfortunate thing about it is that it's really fascistic. Is that a word? Fascistic? It's fascist, okay, in a way, because, let me explain to you why. That money gets printed by the government or borrowed or whatever you want to say, okay, and people get taxed to pay it off, but we all know that the debt's never going to get paid off. They're just building it and pushing it back until the US dollar is not the global reserve currency anymore and the whole deck of cards collapses, which, you know, for all we know is within a few years. Hopefully we can hold it off that long. But all that money just goes back to the big corporations, because where do all the poor people shop? Well, they shop at the cheapest possible place, and the cheapest possible places are the Walmarts and the Costcos and the Amazons, with the free overnight delivery that everybody expects, right? So the problem is every time you give out stimulus, you just empower the corporations more. That's why Wall Street loves it so much, because they know that all that stimulus money is going right back into the pockets of, you know, the biggest corporations, the biggest companies, because people don't have money to shop at mom and pop shops if they're living off stimulus checks. So that's the fascistic part of it. That said, I can understand why people are in need, and you can make the argument that, look, they're bailing out everybody else, so of course you got to bail out your people. That only makes sense. What else do we need to talk about? I think I heard, and this was through somewhat credible news source, but I believe there was 170,000 inmates released early as a result of the COVID. This is over the course of 2020 in the United States, which has one of the largest inmate populations of 2 to 3 million. So 170,000 is pretty significant. But a lot of people have been released early, which may be contributing to the increase in crime in certain places. It's possible. Can't say for sure. Yeah, also, what do we have? Oh yeah, we had the tech moguls getting grilled today by a committee hearing of, I think it was senators. I believe it was senators. It was pretty good. You know, these guys, it was a battle. You know, there was people who are arguing that, no, they're doing a great job in moderating the news, and other people were saying, no, you don't have the right to moderate the news. And it was Jack Dorsey from Twitter, the Google CEO, and of course, Mark Zuckerberg. Obviously, this is incredibly problematic moving forward. But here's the misnomer that a lot of people have. A lot of people seem to think that the technopoly is somehow progressive and communistic and left-wing. But these are the biggest corporations, multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporations. They're all about making money, okay? And if they can make money in any way, they're going to do it. Doesn't matter whose views they have to promote. Like, look at the Conservative Twins YouTube channel. I mean, that channel gets millions of views on every video. And it's a very hardline kind of conservative channel. There's many channels like that that get a lot of airplay. So people need to realize that the people up above, you know, they're not worried about taxes because they don't pay taxes anyways. You know, the big corporations don't pay taxes. We all know that Amazon barely pays any taxes. Do you think they're worried about a tax hike, you know, from Joe Biden? Of course they're not. You know, the people, the big dogs, the 0.0001%, they don't care about the tax increases because they have the best accountants in the world and they'll keep doing what they've always done. The people, I guess, who would have to worry would be the upper class, middle, high middle, maybe to upper class. Regardless of who wins, you know, you need to understand if Biden wins, there's going to be anti-lockdown, anti-vax protests, which are going to probably rival that of the BLM and Antifa protests. If Trump wins, there's going to be BLM and Antifa protests, and they're going to throw the National Guard at those situations left and right, and everybody's going to complain that it's a police state, and then you're going to have that whole dichotomy emerge, you know, between police state and down with the police state and that kind of thing. And then we're kind of right back where we were, you know, post 9/11, with Alex Jones will be in the bullhorn with the street making police state documentaries once again. The tables, they will turn once again. What else do we have to talk about here? Okay, so in Sweden, they're seeing a second spike now. So some people had predicted that they had achieved herd immunity. No, they are spiking, and they are spiking hard. So that's what I mean. I don't know, like I've heard that the tests are very accurate in that they're not counting other types of coronaviruses. Like I've read 50 different articles, and they all seem to come to the consensus that no, these are not picking up other viruses. That was my one concern that I had, was that, you know, what if the fatality rate actually is fairly high And a lot of these infections are not actually COVID, but most of the research doesn't support that at all. See, it's important that you actually go and do research and don't just believe things because they pop up in your newsfeed or some knucklehead like me gets up here and starts talking. So what else do we got? We got the market crashing today. A lot of people suspect that that's because there's a thought that Biden is going to win. At least that's one theory as to why some people think the markets are tanking, even though it's earnings week, and earnings for a lot of these tech companies have been quite positive. But this market has been so up and down, so volatile, we'd really have to see a couple days of solid losses to say that, okay, this is the start of another market crash. But it could be that we've talked about this for months. We knew that it was coming. We knew there was a calm before the storm. We knew the bubble had to pop at some point, and we have been very lucky that it hasn't popped yet. There's still been a very high degree of confidence. I said before, I don't think that the second lockdown is going to trigger the same level of market crash. There's going to need to be some other black swan event, and that could be a dispute over the elections. That could be China's invasion of Taiwan. If there is a dispute over the elections and the United States is distracted because the country's burning down, that could be a possibility. It could be Europe going into upheaval, so there's a few black swan events that can still emerge. So, I just think now more than ever, what do we always say? We say we have to be prepared, and don't get complacent. I know there's a whole chicken little syndrome where, people have been saying for some time that it's going to hit the fan. Look, people have been saying that for 20 years, ever since I've been on the internet. I'm sure they've been saying it since the Cold War and beyond. Because beyond that, it was always shit the fan. Prior to World War II, it was SHTF everywhere all the time. It was only after World War II that we had the convenience of having a thing called prepping and SHTF. Before, prepping was just a way of life. You weren't concerned about prepping when you could barely find your next meal. People would look at you crazy, right? If you're poor. That's why a lot of poor people kind of scoff at the idea of prepping, because it's like, look, man, we're trying to survive right now. So, we don't have that luxury of prepping. But that said, don't let your guard down. Don't get too complacent. Don't prepare for specific events to happen and think that they're absolutely going to happen, because when they don't happen, you're going to go into this mindset where you're like, oh, see, nothing ever happens and I don't need to prepare. That's not what we want to do. We want to always kind of have one foot in the door of what's going on and one foot, prepared, because nothing's going to happen. But that one time, SHTF only needs to happen once for the preppers to be vindicated. That's it. Things only need to go bad once for every prepper video that we've ever made to be justified. And I hope it never comes, because it's going to suck. And people think, oh, you just want SHTF to happen so that, you can be king of the castle and say, I told you so and all this. There's definitely some relief in being vindicated about these things to finally not be viewed as a crazy person. But at the same time, the original reason why people prep is because they know it's going to suck so bad. They know that starving people and all the insecurity that comes with that, and the crime and the constant vigilance that you would have to exercise, would royally suck. It would suck to be worried about your kids every day and how you're going to take care of them if something bad happens. And these are not things that anybody wants. Okay, we need to make that abundantly clear that SHTF would be horrific, utterly horrific. The kind of stuff that went on in Serbia, that I can't remember the website. There's a guy who has a website and he documents all about how SHTF went down in the Serbian war, and he talks about just how terrible it was. And it was nothing to be glorified and romanticized. You're not going to be some Rambo survivor who is making it while everybody else is struggling. It's not like in the movies. And that's, we've been brainwashed with the whole hero archetype. by Hollywood to think that we're going to be the guy, we're going to be the last man standing, we're the ones with the brains, and all the mindless zombies are just going to funnel through the one door, and we're just going to blast them as they come through because they have no cognition and they have no street smarts. But that's the thing. If you're going up against seasoned criminals at that, I mean, seasoned criminals know what they're doing. Yeah, some are dumb, but they also are good at, consider that if somebody is scoping you out, okay, if somebody is scoping out your house, I mean, how many hours out of the day are you, kind of looking out your window? How many hours of the day are you actually vigilant? Probably, maybe a few minutes a day, most people. Now imagine a person is dedicatedly committed to scoping out your house and watching your patterns and behaviors so that they can plan a burglary or home invasion or something like that. Imagine the advantage they have, their attention being on that particular thing and you being completely oblivious to it. People just think that, they're going to be Superman in these situations, and you're not. It's going to be a hellish situation, and after about 2 or 3 days of it, you'll be crying, you'll be praying that things went back to normal, okay? Because you're not going to be able to sleep. You are going to be incredibly stressed out. You're probably going to lose most of your weight just from stress, never mind the calorie deficit that you're going to be running. It's going to be misery for anybody who's not accustomed to living in a hostile environment. I just have to say that we're not trying to glorify this. We don't want this to happen. We don't want this stuff. I hope this stuff never comes to pass. Yes, I've built a brand out of this thing, but that is to help people get prepared if something happens, which I hope never happens. This kind of stuff is never wasted. Going and putting away 5% of your income for emergency preparedness supplies, and that's probably a little high too, depending on how much you make, is never going to be a lost cause because people waste money on the most frivolous of things. So in my mind, it's always a good investment. So don't feel bad about it. And yeah, I mean, what time are we at here? We're at 40 minutes already. It might be relatively quiet if there is a blowout victory in the election. It doesn't matter who wins, though. There are debts to pay. And there's still a myriad of ways that this situation could get really, really bad. If Biden imposes some kind of lockdown or tries to, it's not going to go over well, And if Trump wins by a close margin, it's probably not going to go over well. And if Europe is any model of what's going to happen here, if they try to impose that, then it's not going to end well. Right now, I'm starting to sell a lot more food at the store. And just like back in spring, it doesn't sit well with me right now. Like right now, more than ever, I'm starting to be concerned about letting this food go through the door. And as much as I want to help people, that prepper part of me is kicking in saying, maybe I shouldn't be sending this food all around the world because I just might need it. Anyways, guys, try to get prepared as much as you can. I'm not saying things are going to, I'm not saying the world's going to come to an end or anything like that, but hard times are going to be upon us. So need to get ready. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Let me know if you like this type of format of video. If you're okay with me doing this kind of video on the channel, let me know if there's any way you think it could be improved, because I do take those constructively critical comments, which are informed, very seriously. So stay safe, guys. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, your one-stop shop for premium, high-quality, brand-name products that have been tried and tested by myself and other YouTube gear reviewers. My subscribers save 10% off by using the coupon code SURVIVALPREPPER. All one word in all caps.